Welcome viewers to the part 2 of the conversation we started earlier on the Lake Basin economic outlook, and we are still here with our esteemed guest Joshua Odhiambo, and he will continue sharing more about what we had discussed with him. So we exist in an ecosystem, a business ecosystem, and in this ecosystem there are multiple stakeholders playing different roles, adopting different strategies around the world and even locally. Could you kindly expound on the role of key stakeholders in the region towards pushing us to where we need to be, and business models and best practices that you've seen around the world or you think can be adopted to take us to the next level?
You know, the major factors of production is land, labor, and capital. Then now capital is joined by enterprise. Therefore, this become the most important factors of doing any business. And that is who owns the land. When I'm talking about land, I look at business, I try to interpret it in terms of the businesses our people can do. That's one, we can do agricultural business, agribusiness, and therefore do we own the land? And when I'm talking about ownership of the land, I'm talking about ownership, I'm talking about control, I'm talking about use of land. And yes, our land is majorly owned by our people, but the question is, do they have legal ownership to those properties so that they can be able to utilize land to access credit and invest, and they can invest in it. A very good example is that I come from a region, an area that grows rice, that is Kano Plains, and the rice paddies are registered in the names of the heads of the families, and so, but the people who work the paddies are the women. But the money is then paid by the National Irrigation Board to the men. Okay, so long as women who work the paddies are not part and parcel of the ownership and control of those paddies, we cannot, improve the paddies to produce better, because they would just do the minimal that is required for them, for their husbands to get money to feed their families, which is not normally the case. And then the processing of title deeds. I mean, title deeds have been processed all over the country, but it is in this region that we are still waiting for the president and the ministers to come and distribute title deeds the way it's happening in the rest of the country. Yeah. So until such are done, so that our people can commercialize land ownership.
Because when they go to access capital, the thing is collateral, and most people can actually
exactly.
present land.
Exactly.
So,
and then there's the issue of capital and enterprise. I think it is important that our region must find a way of letting our people access capital. And how do they access capital? We cannot depend on external capital to come and develop us.
That's right.
We must mobilize internal capital through savings and credit. And that is why some of us had very high hopes on the bank that was supposed to be established by the Lake
Region Economic Bloc.
Yes. And that is taking too long. It's taking too long since the idea began in 2013. We have the technical know-how here, and I have sat in meetings that have worked on the economics of how to mobilize money. We have the money here, the money that is required to raise to start a bank. We can start. So we need to work on that so that we can mop up capital and lend it to strategic areas. Once we agree that these are the agricultural areas, these are the fisheries issues and so on that we need to invest in, then that bank should be able to lend to our people at reasonable rates.
Yeah. But Joshua, even as we talk about the bank, I mean, and we're talking about capital access, there are banks in the region. We have banks with amazing products for loaning to different categories of people. Why is it still a problem that we can't be able, actually, if you talk to most bank managers in the region, they're still complaining about people not being able to access, you know, what is the problem? Because I don't think the problem is the money of the bank.
Partly, you know, all these factors join up to militate against business and enterprise, so that if the landowner has no title deed, he cannot go for capital. At the same time, if he is producing, but because of failed governance systems, the cotton lint corporation collapses with his money, he will not pay the bank, and the bank will then auction his land and his other property. He will never go back for another loan. His children will fear going for loans. Okay? So we need to work on all these things. But the other thing that our people must realize is that banks are businesses, and banks are set up by the owners for a specific reason, and the rates and other conditions that bank give in different regions is dependent on their interest in that particular region. So that most of these banks, even the indigenous banks that is owned by Kenyans, are owned by Kenyans not from this region. And so their purpose majorly is to mop up capital from around the country and invest in friendly terms to the people in their regions of interest. So that until the time that we have a bank that understands us, that knows that I will take money and invest it in fisheries, and fisheries, these are the seasons when fisheries can pay. I will not. You get a bank that requires that you start paying the loan in the second month. It will not. We will not be able to work. So we need to establish our financial vehicle, and which, in my view, is a bank. Then the other issue is labor. We need to look at our labor again. The colonial government divided this country into regions and indoctrinated us on what we are supposed to be good at, so that we are told that we are supposed to be good. We are supposed to be working in offices, majorly as their clerks and so on and so forth. So a number of us, went to school and still go to school to go for the blue collar jobs. While these other communities were cultured to go to school, to come back and work as agriculturalists, and to go and work in the Jokali and so on and so forth. My point is that we need to relook at our education goals in this region. Yesterday I took my girl to school, and I saw a board written occupation, and I look at the board, and they were talking about engineers, doctors, pilots.
There were no fish farmers in there.
There were no fish farmers. There was no businessman. There was nothing to do with a rural agriculturalist. There was nothing to do with rural agricultural engineer. Those are the skills that we need here. So we might need to as a region converge and discuss what are the skills that we need. What kind of skills do we have? How do we reorientate our skill development so that our schools and our institutions of higher learning can produce skills that our people need for entrepreneurship? But finally, on the issue of labor, how do we then also invest on those institutions? I believe that we are not doing enough to develop education, so that this region was known as the center of excellence in education. This has changed over the years, and then we need to work on the attitude of our people with regard to taking up any kind of jobs that are available. If you do a small labor assessment in town, you will realize that basic labor opportunities that would employ most of our people are shunned by our people, or the businessmen then shun our people from being employed in such opportunities because of the attitude of the employer, but also the attitude of our people. We need to work on those. Yes.
Wow, that's very interesting. And especially on education, there's always this conversation about, Kisumu having, we have the lake, despite the fact that we have the lake here, but even looking at the educational institutions around, we don't have a university that provides, say,
something on fisheries. Exactly.
Which is very sad.
Yeah. So as a parting shot, what would you like us to take home as we go back to build the economy and also champion the future for our people? What should we start doing now?
Especially to the people, the entrepreneurs, people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. Most young people still have ideas, they just want to start up. I don't know what's holding them back. And also the stakeholders in the region, be it the banks, be it the local government. So who is exactly in charge of, say, if you're talking about we need to start changing our attitude, who is responsible for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think in any economy, government plays a very important role. And now we have the county and the national government. Even as we mobilize and we need to demand our share of services from the national government, that every ministry should come and work with our people in identifying the needs of our people in production and business and help our people, then develop. We need to also put pressure on our county governments to focus on the critical issues. I need to see a fisheries policy by the county government of Kisumu, Siaya, Homa Bay, and so on. The county. I need to see agricultural policy. Then at the level of the Lake Region Economic Bloc, we need to see joint policies and joint programs, joint investments in infrastructure towards our farms. Okay, we need to see the issue of the bank, but we also need to see training of our people and awareness on the opportunities that are available. I take note of the fact that the national government and the politicians from other regions were sensitizing people for the last 3 or so years over the issue of avocado and the opportunity in China for export of avocado. No one is doing it in our region.
Not in our region.
Yeah, no one is doing it in our region.
Actually, the whole country, there was only one person who qualified.
Exactly. So look at that.
Yeah.
So, you see, when you then marry that with something that you introduced previously, and that is that what's the role of political leadership in business and economics? And my view is that political economy is one thing, that because politics emerges out of the need to control and influence the resources. That is the distribution of resources in the society, and therefore the politics should be a vehicle or a mechanism to ensure that economics works. So in this case, that it works for our people, and therefore we need to demobilize our people from doing politics for politics' sake to doing politics for the purpose of poverty reduction and economic empowerment. Yes. Yeah.
Especially now that in the BBI we have the three-tier government proposed on the lake. We already have, one of the most active regional blocks.
Exactly. So, we don't even need to wait for the regional governments to be proposed. Yeah. I wish, for instance, that even before we start holding the BBI rallies, we could be having rallies to sensitize our people on the fisheries opportunities, on what the county governments are doing on infrastructure, on the progress of the bank, Those are the most important things for us. When you hear that for instance, the political leadership in Central Mid, despite the fact that they have the presidency, and despite the fact that the statistics in this country demonstrate that they have received the lion's share, they don't massage the president's ego. They still accuse the president's government of not doing enough for their region. With that, and they have just, been promised 30 billion shillings worth of roads. Okay? I always say, I don't have the current statistics, but in 2007, that's a very old statistic, but it can show us something. In 2007, Central Province, which is smaller than Nyanza, had a total of 2,100 kilometers of tarmac road. Nyanza, which is bigger than Central, had a total of 900 kilometers of tarmac road. That meant that for us to get to the point where Central was at that moment, we needed another 1,200 kilometers of roads. But what has happened over the years is that they have gotten more tarmac road. And this tarmac road go to their hospital, go to their farms, go to their factories, and therefore improve their economics. These are the kind of discussions that I'm waiting for our politicians to be discussing in Parliament and to be discussing in our county assemblies.
And it is us, the people, who need to inform them, to
demand
for this conversation.
And as professionals, we have a responsibility to support. The challenge is that, for instance, I personally tried to work with a few and told them we can be your backroom support. We help you in generating, motions and bills and policy statements, so that when you stand in the assembly or you stand in Parliament or in the Senate, you are talking from a point of research. And most of them are not interested.
All right. Well, we have to end the show. Thank you very much for the the insightful and very delectable conversation we've had about this theme of today, which is the Lake Region Economic Outlook. We would love to continue with this conversation, but because of time, we have to end it here. But please subscribe for more of this in our subsequent shows. And please, we want you to keep talking about this conversation for the benefit of the Lake Victoria region. See you again next time. Bye.